guest tonight. Meera Shankar is the former ambassador to USA. And also joining us on India Tonight to discuss the IPEF is Manoj Joshi. He, of course, is a distinguished fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. Thank you both for joining us. Clearly, as far as I see it, this has larger implications as far as India is concerned, as far as the Indo-Pacific region is concerned. But tell us from your perspective, from the kind of rhetoric, of course, that we hear politically, is this a further alignment of India with the United States? What are the immediate understanding beyond the trade pact? What do you think this means for Indo-US relations? Meera Shankar, this is for you.
Well, firstly, I think we've got to keep in mind that if we take both trade in goods and services, then the US is India's largest trading partner, and it's one with which we have a modest trade surplus, which varies in the region of $20 to $25 billion. So that is something to be valued for India, because mostly we have trade deficits with other countries and a huge trade deficit with China. So trade with the US, business partnerships with the US are an important element of the bilateral relationship. Now, we have to see where this goes, because the US still has quite a bit of protectionist tendencies at the moment in terms of where it is on trade. And in fact, President Trump had walked out of the earlier trade agreement which US had negotiated for the Indo-Pacific, which was called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, when the US walked out, the remaining countries, many of them, Japan included, worked out a comprehensive and progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, and China has applied to join it. So for India, I think we would have to see where it goes. If you say that reduction in tariffs or market access are not on the table, then what precisely is on the table? Does it mean tighter labor standards? Does it mean tighter environmental standards? What does it mean? Jake Sullivan, the US National Security Advisor, of course, has indicated that this trade forum is intended to keep the US worker at the center. And he has talked about a focus on climate change and green technologies, energy transition, infrastructure, and critical technologies. I think these are the 4 areas, and these are also the 4 areas which the Quad has identified as areas of potential cooperation amongst them. So I think perhaps we have also participated in the launch of the partnership. From whatever I've read, we are still keeping the door open. We have said we will participate in the negotiations and discussions, but we need to see where it goes. So sure. That is where we are today.
Yes.
Now, with many of the countries in the Quad,
yes.
In fact, other than the US, both Japan and Australia now, we already have trade agreements.
Sure. Exactly.
Japan.
Yes.
So I think the key question is, how do we shape our relationship with the US?
That's right.
And earlier, we didn't join the comprehensive...
If I may interject and bring in Manoj Joshi on this, because like you correctly pointing out, we have trade agreements that are already there. How does the IPEF really change it from a purely trade perspective? And Meera has been kind enough to talk about some of those aspects. But looking at how India has very readily signed up for this, Manoj Joshi, considering that tariffs, the niggling issue between leading signatories of this pact, will remain off the table, what can it hope to accomplish going ahead from here, considering that certain bits of the trade agreements are already in place? So how will this agreement do anything differently?
Actually, I'm not sure about that, meaning that is the real problem. Meaning the US and US officials, they've made a big splash. They've got, kind of 13 participating countries. But if you leave out issues of market access and tariffs, I'm saying what is left? So it's okay. They are talking about 4 areas, which they say, we will look at things like harmonizing efforts to secure supply chain, expand clean energy, fight corruption, and pave the way for greater digital trade. And strangely enough, US officials have been also briefing, saying that participating members can be allowed to choose any one of the 4 areas. So they don't have to choose all 4 areas. So the whole thing looks a bit unwieldy. And the real problem, I think, no one is confronting, particularly the United States, is the issue of its economic engagement with the Indo-Pacific. And that was there through the TPP. And the US has abandoned the TPP, but it's not willing to sign back on the successor agreement, the TPP. And as far as India is concerned, we again have been kind of reluctant, kind of on trade agreements, and we stayed out of the RCEP. Everyone else is in RCEP or TPP or CTPP. So what I'm saying is that the whole thing looks like somewhat cumbersome. They say that they're going to negotiate these things, but the whole problem with this Quad, its declarations, is that they've made a lot of fine declarations, many, and they've had some very nice summits and things like that. But if you actually look at their achievements, they're pretty thin. They're not very substantial. Yes, on the security side, they are substantial. After all, the United States, UK, and Australia created the AUKUS alliance last year, which is a substantial alliance for the Indo-Pacific. But, we have nothing to do with it. Meaning India is not a part of the AUKUS.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to get at is that this IPEF, to me, appears to be some kind of a, what should I say? I mean, they're putting it up there as a show. But unless you get down to the substance, people want to trade more.
Exactly.
I mean, China's trade with ASEAN is double that of the US.
Correct. And there's a huge question mark on whether they will be able to trade more thanks to IPF, or is this more grandstanding? Meera Shankar, you've understood the way US politics work. Is this about Biden trying to leave behind the legacy of the Trump regime and what Trump was trying to do by making the US economy more insular, more protective? Is that where it is? Is this a way for the US to counter China as far as trade hegemony is concerned? What's your reading of what the US is trying to do here?
Look, I think that if you go back to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, it was a Democratic Party initiative. It was negotiated under President Obama and concluded, and they had got special authority from the Congress, fast-track authority to negotiate it. But President Trump threw it out. Now, I'm sure that there are members of Biden's administration who recognize that you cannot have an Asian presence which does not have an economic component, because trade is such a heavy factor in the relationships that the US has with the countries in the region. But on the other hand, the politics of the day is extremely protectionist, and there isn't an environment which is conducive to really re-looking at a free trade agreement in the region. So in the absence of that, I think the US is looking to play to its strengths in other areas, for instance, clean energy, because they are quite far ahead in this whole area of clean energy technologies. Then, including green hydrogen, the Quad has talked of creating a clean green shipping corridor, which is net carbon neutral. and also accelerating the green hydrogen economy.
Right.
The second area, I think, which would be of interest to the US is critical technologies. Now, if you look at the competition between China and the US, it is in the area of critical technologies where countries are going to, establish dominance over systems in other countries. So whether it is, using US or Western technology for 5G, or using Chinese technology for 5G, I think these choices will determine, in a sense, which networks you are going to be a part of. So for the US, pushing the issue of critical technologies
Yes.
onto the agenda will help get sharper focus and attention from countries in the region,
Sure.
many of whom have security concerns regarding China,
Yes.
on some of these issues.
So it puts US slam dunk in the center of the kind of trade and its objectives that they are trying to achieve at a rather crucial point in our economic standing in the world, because you're looking at a pandemic ravaged economy all across the world. Inflationary concerns are very high. You're looking at the possibility of a recession now. Manoj Joshi, with Indian objectives coming into play at this point in time, what Prime Minister Modi is trying to achieve has been with a Make in India initiative. Do you think that that comes into play with an IPEF, with India being such a ready signatory to this trade agreement?
Well, I think we've been actually waiting for the last 2-3 years. Since President Trump began his decoupling policy, opportunities were opened up for other countries of the region, for industry moving out of China. Some industry moved out of China because of the American decisions, but there was also a shift out because of the rising wages in China. Now, the point is, all the research so far shows that the biggest gainer has been Vietnam and not India. Though we have put up, sort of schemes and all that, for incentives to the industry, but somehow or the other, we have not been able to actually attract the kind of industry that was moving away from China, supply chains that wanted to reconstitute themselves away from China. And I think one of the important parts of this, and this is where China will continue to hold an advantage, is that China and Vietnam will both be members of RCEP. See, if you're members of a common FTA, the shifting industry within that FTA is advantageous. By staying out, actually we have, damaged our own potential. If we had been within the FTA, within the RCEP, then we could have made greater efforts to attract, because you work in a common tariff framework. But I think policies in the last 2-3 years have not helped Make in India.
Right.
The big gainers have been other countries, and as I said, Vietnam is the big gainer. Malaysia is a big gainer. Philippines is a big gainer.
Sure.
But not India.
Not India, unfortunately, and we still have our doubts whether signing up for agreements like IPEF is really going to help that cause. We'll have to wait and watch that entire space pan out. But for the moment, this is the reality that as many as 13 countries have signed up for a largely American objective. Whether it's going to serve a need that goes beyond tackling Chinese hegemony and trade within the region, that is something that is going to be a key point to watch out for. Thank you for joining us with your perspectives on this, both. It has been a pleasure having you on India Tonight.